have your economic systems exercise and your video discussion. Those are due on Valentine's Day. So that's going to be coming up this Friday. By the way, guys, if you have not purchased something special for your sweetheart yet, anybody know what a dozen roses is going for this year if you get them delivered? Any guesses? How much? $30? Oh, keep going up. Keep going up. Yes. How much? That's a good guess. It's even higher, man. Close to $100, depending on what market you're in. Now, in the off season, what do a dozen roses cost? Yeah, exactly right. If you get delivered, maybe 30, 35, maybe 15 if you go someplace inexpensive. It's definitely a market of opportunity for people selling flowers, people selling greeting cards, all this stuff. And the funny thing is, the day after Valentine's Day, the chocolate prices plummet. So, guys, it's an economic holiday. But to remind you, you have your economic systems exercise and your video discussion, both due on Friday. The video discussion is an easy 10 points. All I'm asking you to do is give me your opinion about how we're making use of foreign labor. Now, after we finish chapter 3, guys, you know we review. Every time we do a chapter, we do a PowerPoint review. Here's the good news. After we do our chapter 3, I will send you a review PowerPoint with everything we covered. So you'll have a study guide for this class. Now, guys, in terms of the bonus questions on my exams in this class, anybody know what I use for bonus questions? Yes?
Did you say the Russian car was bonus question?
It shows up sometimes, the East German car. Remember what the name of it was? It's a turbine. And we talked about current events in this class is fair game for bonus questions. So we talked about it in class. It could show up. I've done bonus questions ranging from what was my favorite Super Bowl commercial to what was my dog's name. With how much attention you pay in class. There's a standing rule in this class, though, for a bonus question. Anybody know what it is? If you don't know the answer, you ever heard this? If you make me laugh, tell me a joke. If I actually laugh out loud when I read your joke, if you don't know the bonus question, I may give you a point. I have given humor points because, man, we need more humor in the world right now. So remember that. Now, guys, on Wednesday, if you don't normally bring your laptop to class, I'm asking you to bring your laptop. How many of you already have Lockdown Browser installed on your computer? All right, we're going to all together install Lockdown Browser so we all have the current version of it because I use that for my exams in this class. 100% of the tests you take in this class will be on the computer. The format is all multiple choice and true and false. There are no fill in the blanks. There are no essay questions. The only essay questions actually are the bonus questions. So bring your laptop. We're going to also be announcing some more work we're going to be doing in career services and the next chapter's exercise, the chapter 3 exercise. I'm not concerned with those right now. We want to get through where we're at first. Guys, we left off talking about how to reach global markets. To give us some kind of shape for this conversation today, we all know something big is happening in China right now. What's going on in China? Something really big and very dangerous. Yes? The coronavirus. It's starting to actually affect industry. There literally are people who have not left their homes in over a month because they don't want to go outside. If you go outside, you go to a grocery store, they check your temperature before you walk in the store to make sure that you're not carrying the coronavirus. It's that serious. Well, people aren't leaving their homes. What else are they not doing? They're not working, man. We're going to start seeing supply chain problems for Apple. We're going to start seeing supply chain problems for anything ranging from Walmart to companies that use Chinese goods and services. We have a global economy. And what today is all about is how companies get to global markets. So we go from the left side, the least dangerous or least involved ways to getting involved in global markets, to the most committed, the toughest ways to get involved in the continuum, from easiest to hardest. We're going to walk through this one at a time. How many of you in this class today are wearing something with either a Nike brand logo or a sports team brand logo on? Raise your hand if you're wearing something that's got one of those logos. Guess what, guys? You're probably wearing a licensed product. For example, if I have a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey, the Pittsburgh Steelers literally didn't make that jersey. They gave somebody else a license to make that jersey. They paid a fee, they paid a copyright fee to be able to say, we want to make Pittsburgh Steelers merchandise, and we're going to sell it, and we're going to give you part of it. Why do companies, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, why do you love this arrangement? Yes?
You don't have to handle any production or anything.
There's no work involved, man. Sure, you can use my likeness or my logo and just pay me to do it. So we basically license products to be sold in other countries. We license products to be be produced in other countries. You can make Pittsburgh Steelers merchandise anywhere and not have to literally wonder if you're training your team to do it. It is the least invasive way to get into a foreign market. You can license something for use in another country. It's a big deal these days too, guys, because let's think about this, and I promise you I'm going somewhere with this. We talked in a previous class about what killed Toys R Us in this country. Why did Toys R Us die? Yes? Exactly. What do they like?
They like phones, computers, video games.
You got it, man. And although we have hardware, the biggest part of that is what we refer to as intellectual property. So if we license, for example, that we're going to have our property, our game is going to be available in China, our movie is going to be available in Hong Kong, our publications, things you can't really hold other than maybe a book, are going to be licensed other places. It's an easy way to get into a foreign market. Costs you next to no money to do it. The next stage, in terms of getting into licensing, we get into actually exporting. That means I make something here and I send it somewhere else. Wonderful. Guys, what are the challenges to exporting products out of the United States to China right now? If I wanted to go and make something here and sell in China, what's my biggest hurdle right now? Yes?
The Communist Party in China?
Yeah, and in particular, what are they putting on our goods? Well, they're putting tariffs on it. We're not to the embargo stage yet, but we might be headed that direction if we don't resolve our issues. So it's great to be able to export. You have quality control. For example, let's say I have a car company and I'm making very high-end sports cars. I can make sure the quality is good. I can check them before I send them overseas. I know my product. The difficulty is you still have to pay for things like shipping. You got to deal with trade. You got to deal with trade conflict. But you can export very easily. It's not hard to do. Then we get into franchising. Guys, we have franchises all over the place, whether it is Pizza Hut, whether it is Taco Bell. Who's the most profitable franchise in the United States, by the way? It's not McDonald's. Chick-fil-A. Per restaurant, they're more profitable. Now, overall profit, you said McDonald's, you're absolutely correct. But per restaurant, they have a higher profit margin, they have higher quality standards. So franchises are great. Why are franchises so attractive too? It's sort of a form of licensing. If you own Taco Bell, by the way, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, KFC are all owned by one company. Anybody know who it is? When you eat something that tastes really good, what's something we say sometimes? It begins with a Y. Yum. It's Yum Brands. Anybody know who owns Yum Brands? I'll give you a hint. They make lots of fizzy beverages. Pepsi. Pepsi owns Yum Brands. Pepsi also, by the way, owns Frito-Lay. If you want to know why you can get a Doritos taco shell at Taco Bell, it's because they're all owned by the same company. Franchising is pretty easy. We're going to basically say, okay, you can open a restaurant in the Middle East. You can open a Kentucky Fried Chicken. You're going to license our name. You're going to license our brand. You're going to license our type of cooking and our recipes. But we change things depending on where we go. I love this. If you go to Taiwan, you get sweet potato donuts. You can get pineapple flavored donuts. We go with regional tastes. If we go to other places, Domino's, for example, I love that you can get shrimp. You can get beef with yolk sauce and onions if you go get Domino's pizza in Japan. One of my favorite things about Japan, however, I'll show you shortly, it's called the Mega Pizza. McDonald's, if you go to McDonald's in Germany, you can get a beer because it's local customs, it's local tastes. Guys, there's one thing, however, on McDonald's menu that you cannot get in Israel. What is it? You can't get a Big Mac. Why is that? Well, it is Israel. But do you know what the dietary restriction is? Well, you can eat cows. You cannot mix meat and cheese. So it comes from a line in Jewish scripture that basically says a calf should not be boiled in its own milk. And so basically you cannot have cheeseburgers. If you buy a cheeseburger, or buy a hamburger rather, you also can't buy a milkshake at the same time. That's part of the dietary restrictions. So if we go to vegetarian countries, for example, if you go to India, a lot of people there do not eat beef. And so we'll see a lot more things like chickpea burgers. This is Pizza Hut's Mega Pizza. This is how they feel like Americans probably eat. This is for sale in Tokyo's Pizza Hut. The crust on this pizza is made out of a pastry stuffed with hot dogs. It's got hamburgers, pizza, pepperoni. It's basically every American fast food wrapped into one pizza. It's fantastic. So that's how franchising works, guys. In addition, how many of you, when you were kids, either watched the movies or the cartoon or loved the toys of Transformers. Transformers are pretty kick butt, right? Well, check this out. They came out in 1982 in Japan, and they were a flop. Kids just didn't like them. They didn't get the concept. They exported them to the United States. They produced a cartoon series in the 1980s for the United States and exported that back to Japan, and that's what made Transformers a hit in Japan. It had to be a hit in the United States and get exported back. So sometimes this kind of licensing or franchising, for example, comes back around. Then we get into something called contract manufacturing. All that means, guys, is that I essentially am contacting a company in a foreign country to say, will you make this for me? Pretty easy. I send you the specs, I send you the information, tell you how to make it. You make it over there, I can export it back to here. It sounds like a pretty good idea, especially if you're getting lower labor rates. What are some of the problems with contract manufacturing? Are there problems for U.S. manufacturers if we use contract manufacturing? What might be an issue? I'll give you a hint. It's part of the reason we have tariffs right now. What happens if you manufacture someplace outside your own country? What happens to jobs in your country? Yeah, you're drying up your own economy because workers aren't getting paid. Now, let's think about it for a second. Does anybody know what the average Detroit auto worker makes a year? If we took their salary, or their hourly rate, and put it into an annual salary, anybody have any guess? Take a guess, guys. Humor me. Yes. 65. Well, keep going up. These guys are making starting wages about $45 an hour for working jobs that require a high school education. There's nothing wrong with getting paid for hard work. I don't mean to say that. The new trade agreement we have in the new NAFTA, essentially, the new North American Trade Agreement, the required minimum wage for workers in Mexico is going to be about $16 an hour. So you're making pickup trucks. You can pay $45 an hour, or you can pay $16 an hour. Which is better for the company? You got it, man. Well, here's some of the issues. Well, obviously, the economic issue. We don't want to export jobs from our country. Let's say, for example, I go up and there's a local wood shop here in town. There is actually. Somebody does contract manufacturing. And I have a recliner I want this guy to make for me. I want to see how work is coming along. I can walk up there and talk to the guy. If I get the recliner and it doesn't work the way I want, what can I do? I can take it back and go talk to him and say, make this right. Well, if I'm getting it made in China, how much direct control do I actually have? Not a lot. Quality issues come into this as well. That's one of the other challenges of contract manufacturing. You can see as we're going, guys, we are taking on greater degrees of risk for our company. Guys, stuff that's been produced under contract, for example, here are some products that were produced for foreign manufacturers. For example, this little nice looking two-door coupe here was actually made in the United States. There's a French car company called Renault that made them under contract for the United States market. It's hard to see, but that's a Japanese Batman comic. And over here, this Jeep, which looks completely typical as a 1950s Jeep. If you look closely on the grill, it has a Mitsubishi logo on it because the United States actually, at that time, Willys and American Motors subcontracted and had a company in Japan, Mitsubishi Motors, make Jeeps for them to sell in Japan because it was cheaper than shipping them. So they were using local markets. Now, guys, here's a question for you. And we're already exploring the idea of how this works with things like cell phone batteries. But check it out, guys. If we're using foreign labor, if we're going to places where we can pay a lot less to have the same product made that we could do in the United States, we're making more money for the company. Are we making an ethical choice? Is that a good decision? Yes, sir.
No, because they don't pay the workers in other countries living wages. They pay them like scrap.
It's absolutely true. Like we take, for example, my favorite athletic apparel shoes are Nikes. I love Nike sneakers. You know what a pair of Nike sneakers costs to make in Malaysia? Any guesses? We're talking probably, if you go materials, labor, and everything, top end about $10. What's a new pair of Nikes go for in the store?
180.
Yeah, at least. And if it's first run, we can easily get to $150, $200. Where's that money going? Who's making the money? Yes. You got the market will bear the price because we we have a good economy right now. The people who market the shoes are making money. The people who endorse the shoes are making money. The big companies are making money. It doesn't always translate down to the individual. Now here's the flip side though, too, guys. Right now, if we were buying, I'm actually shopping for a phone right now, so I'm pretty aware of these prices. If I were paying full price with Verizon or AT&T for an iPhone 11, what am I going to be into? For let's say a 128 gigabit model, what am I going to be paying? $750 to $1,000, depending on the special that's being run. Now those phones are made in China, and they're made by hand, by the way. I'll show a video in class one of these days. You'll see how iPhones are actually made. What would it cost to make that phone in the United States? Paying a United States wage. Any guess? Over here, what do you think? How much would it cost? Oh, humor me, guys. Give me a guess. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
$200.
How much?
200.
Oh, it's going to be way more. So if we're talking like, for example, if a phone costs $700 to get it from China, double the price. It's going to take at least double the price because we pay more for labor here. We have a higher standard of living. The folks who make iPhones make about $4 an hour. So that's what you get paid for doing manual labor on this stuff. So here's the ethical question we have to ask ourselves. Would we be willing to pay more? Please put your phones away, guys. Would we be willing to pay more for products that come from people working in our country than we would be to export the labor somewhere else? And if so, how much? What's the cost, guys? What are your opinions? We have a president who's pushing for more manufacturing to come back to the United States. Is it going to happen or not? What are your thoughts? Yes?
It's probably pretty hard to make a change like that, considering how deep rooted we are into like foreign economies and their needs too. Because if we close all those companies and move back over here, those people are going to be out of jobs too.
That's an interesting point. So right now, let's say, for example, what's the minimum wage in the state of Pennsylvania? $7.25 is going up to $7.50, for example. Right now, if we're paying $7.25 or $7.50, that's not a living wage in Pennsylvania, but it's the minimum required wage. If we're Nike, or if we're Apple or Foxconn, and we're paying wages that don't stack up to our wages, but are good wages for those areas, are we making an ethical decision? Is it a good decision? What are your thoughts? You're nodding your head yes. What are your thoughts? Is it okay to pay $4 an hour in China if that's the going rate? So if we can live off it, why not? Other opinions? Yes.
Workers are making that choice to work for that wage. So like, if they wanted to make a change, they could, as like a whole, try to make a change for how they do.
So it's a free country. Well, China's not technically a free country, but they're making a free will decision to take that wage. Other opinions? What are your thoughts? These are ethical decisions we have to make, guys. Yes, sir.
I don't know how it is in China, but I feel like competition would be a big factor. Like I know Martin's grocery stores pays $10 an hour because they want quality workers. So the competition, they give better workers, they pay more. I don't know how it would go with Chinese factory workers, but I feel like maybe some factories would pay more.
It's a great thought. And to go back to economic theory, the idea that if people prosper, they hire and treat people better. Anybody remember the name of that theory? It has to do with a hand. The invisible hand theory. So there could be that as well. Guys, here's the question we have to ask ourselves, though, when we're doing this kind of work. Where do our phones come from? Where do our products come from? And who's actually making them? There's a really good documentary. I encourage you to look this up. A guy who worked for St. John's University. He was a soccer coach for St. John's. And he would not wear a Nike logo. He did not like the factory conditions that Nike was putting the workers in. And as a result, he went to where Nike factories were taking place, and he lived on the wages of a Nike worker for a month. And he had to choose between medicine and food on a regular basis. His point was, we don't always know where our products are coming from. If you run a company and you run a supply chain, these are ethical decisions you will have to make. I'm not judging you for wearing Nikes or having an iPhone because I do too. It is important for us, however, to know where these things come from and who makes them. So, guys, questions so far? Now we are going to continue. We're going to make some time on this chapter today because we've been taking our time on some of the other chapters. Again, to remind you, every level we're getting in here, we're getting into an additional layer of risk. So we're talking, for example, now we're getting into joint ventures. Anybody ever heard the term venture before? What's a venture? If we're going to have a company venture, what is that? What might be a synonymous term for venture? How about initiative or effort? It means we're going to do something together. Like this class is kind of a joint venture. You guys and me, we're working together to create something here. A joint venture means two people or two companies are getting together. We're going to share our ideas. We're going to share our ideas and our technology. We're going to share risk, and we're going to get into markets together. So joint ventures, for example, are when companies come together. It's a pretty interesting joint venture. The difference between a joint venture and a strategic partnership, which we're going to cover momentarily, is basically how deep you're getting. Strategic alliances are long-term. We're going to differentiate these two terms. How many people here, for example, are car people? You enjoy automobiles. You keep up on cars. All right. Ford and Chevy, what's their biggest selling type of vehicle at this point in time? Trucks. They have something in common now, Ford and Chevy, between their full-size trucks. Anybody know what it is? This is hard to believe, but it's true. The Chevy Silverado and the Ford F-150 have the same transmission. They went together on what we refer to as a joint venture to create that transmission. They did it to share costs, to share development, to share technology. And as a result, they both saved money. So that would be an example of a joint venture, something they did for a short period of time for a mutually beneficial outcome. A strategic alliance is something where you basically are going longer term with your relationship with somebody. For example, you might have a strategic alliance between a company that produces petroleum and a convenience store chain who says in the long run, we're going to continue to work together. Write this down, guys. Seriously, write this down. A joint venture is limited term and usually has a concrete outcome. A strategic alliance is a long-term partnership. That's the difference between the two. So why is a strategic alliance more risky? Yes. That's exactly right. And if you go for something like a joint venture, it's very limited in term. We can write it off, cut our losses, and go. Strategic alliance, we're in this for the long term. It's like a marriage. It's hard to break up. Excellent answer to that question. So again, example of a joint venture would be, if you have paid attention, the recent sports car that BMW and Toyota both put out at the same time was developed as a joint venture. The Toyota Supra has actually got BMW DNA in it. A strategic alliance would be, for example, Microsoft embeds Skype technology in their operating system, which they do to help out with their Windows video chat, instead of developing it themselves. So they're literally building on each other's technology. And then we get into the highest risk portion of all, which is something we refer to as foreign direct investment. That means we're actually putting money into somebody else's economy. We're going to own and control factories there. Guys, it's risky because you're basically talking about setting up operations. If you're Ford, you've got Ford Europe. General Motors, you have General Motors Italy, for example. We're putting money into other economies. It's tough because we've got culture to contend with. We've got to manage people halfway around the world. We've got other issues we might also have to deal with. For example, why is it so hard for an American company to set up a business in China? Big guesses. What do you think? Why is it so tough? We're going someplace outside the United States. Why is it so tough to set up a factory? Yes, sir. You got it, man. It's also called bureaucracy. It's also called corruption. It means, for example, if I want to operate in China, I have to have a partner in China to be a part owner of my business. It's a rule they set up so that China's government is always in everybody else's business. We don't do that in the United States. We're much more open to foreign investment than other countries are. They want to have a stake in the game. They want to have some control over it. It's cultural and it's a big issue. If we get to countries like India, for example, the bureaucracy and the paperwork to set up a business is so dense, you practically have to bribe people to be able to get the right permits. These are tough things, guys. So if we have foreign direct investment, it means we're actually buying up property and we're creating foreign subsidiaries. Again, Ford Europe is a great example of that. Some companies truly are multinational corporations. Guys, there is a company you may have heard of, the Heineken Beer Company. It's funny because we don't think of beer being a world-changing business, but it is. Heineken operates in something like 50 or 60 countries around the globe. And people get excited when Heineken decides to build a plant in their country. Guys, I know none of you in here are of legal drinking age, or if you are, you never imbibe this stuff. But that being said, what are the key ingredients of beer? Yes.
Yeast and grains.
Yep, you got it. So we got to have yeast and grains. The grains are a product of agriculture for sure. What is the biggest component of beer?
Water.
You got it. So if you want to have a brewery, you've got to have clean and reliable water supplies. If we're setting up a brewery, what else do we have to have if we want to distribute our product? Something for the vehicles to actually operate on. I'm talking about distribution center for sure. And to get to that distribution center, we need gas, we need infrastructure, and we actually need this physical hard stuff that our cars roll on. What am I talking about? What do cars roll on? Tires for sure. What do tires sit on? Roads. That's exactly correct. Infrastructure. So if you've got a beer company coming in that wants to serve that community, they're going to build roads. They're going to put in infrastructure. They're going to put in clean water. People's standards of living go up when industry comes in an area because the industry needs it to support what they want to do as well. Now, the bad part is, if you have Heineken rolling into an area, it can have the same effect that Walmart can have on an area. What happens when Walmart comes into a given area after people are excited about jobs? What happens? Yep, it kills the locals. So Heineken does the same thing to local and regional breweries. At the same token, they can build schools, build better infrastructure. We see it happen. Actually, one of Heineken's largest places to invest lately has been China. The other has been the African continent. Sometimes, guys, we get into what we refer to as sovereign wealth funds. And this is something that's part of foreign direct investment. What this means, guys, is actual countries will invest in other countries. And right now, China can't buy Africa quickly enough. Why are they so interested in Africa? Yes.
Population's booming.
Plenty of people to sell to, no two ways about that. There's something else they're after, too. What else might the Chinese be after in Africa? Totally. It's one of the most resource-rich countries or continents in the world. Diamonds, petroleum, cobalt for smartphones. There is so much good stuff in Africa, and the world wants in on it. So if you have somebody like the Chinese who are investing in Africa, that is why. Guys, it's really interesting when you think about the way that this foreign direct investment happens. The fact that we've got Toyota factories in the United States, the fact that we've got Subaru factories in the United States. It means when we say we're buying American, what does that actually mean at this point? Does anybody know, by the way, by a percentage of components, we took everything that went into the car. What is the most American-made automobile? Any guesses? Yes. Well, 85 is the percentage, but can you guess the model of the car? Yes. It's a good guess. It's not the Jeep. Yes. It's not a Chevy. Nope, not a Mustang. It's not even an American manufacturer. It is a Toyota. You know what car? It's a good guess. It's actually the Toyota Camry, the most American-made car. You have the Toyota Camry is made, I think, in like Indianapolis. And when it comes down to it, the Chevy Suburban is made in Mexico. So the largest big pimpin' SUV from General Motors isn't even made in the United States. So guys, it's not the same for every manufacturer. It's closer to 75%. I think I did have it right. Indiana for Toyota Camry. But the top two cars in terms of total percentages in the United States are Toyota and Camry in terms of stuff that comes from America. It's a global business, guys. We're actually going to skip this exercise for today because I think we're going to make up some time. But we are going to stop, however, because we're going hard and fast here. I would like to get our first question or comment of the day. What would you guys like to talk about? What would you like to ask? We'll start over here. Well, here's the way to think about it. If we were making Toyotas in Japan, what do we have to pay to get them here? So we're talking about massive shipping. We're talking, at this point, probably about tariffs. By manufacturing in the United States, you're avoiding tariffs. And here's the other thing that a lot of people don't realize. Toyota makes specific vehicles for the American market. For example, what's the biggest vehicle that Toyota makes right now? Sequoia, and what's the other one? The Tundra. Two gigantic SUVs that that don't sell in many other markets outside of North America because our tastes here are for bigger vehicles. They're made for this market. We had a question or comment, John?
We just built a big igloo in our backyard.
What's this now?
We built a big igloo.
You got a picture? I need to see this.
For about like 6 hours.
Wow. Is that what you did on Friday?
So here's before we like put the top on it and stuff. And then we put a tarp over the top.
Wow, you're in for the long haul, man.
And
What
we built
did you write on the side?
that's what they call our house.
Okay.
Walker actually wrote that on there.
That's beautiful, man. Nice work. So, see, somebody made the most out of their snow day. I hear that those kind of things will keep sodas cold for a long time, too. Sodas and other fizzy beverages. Guys, we're going to get into some of the other factors that affect our global markets. We hit on some of them. In terms of sociocultural, that means who are we as people? For example, in Europe, people who have cars get the option of something that we just don't get much anymore in the United States. For people who really love to drive, what am I talking about? Involves using your hand and your foot. Yeah, man. How many people, by show of hands, can drive a stick in this class? Hardly anybody, because we hate manual transmissions in this country. They love them in Europe. That's an example of a socio-cultural factor. Then we're going to be getting into economic and financial, meaning what drives the way we sell things out of the markets. Legal and regulatory, meaning what laws affect the way we trade with other countries. And then we're going to get into the physical and environmental effects of how we trade with other countries as well. There's a lot of stuff to consider here, guys. When we get into other countries, how we do business is not just always about the product. How we do business is how we interact with other people. In the United States, for example, if we were doing business, what's the very first thing we start a contract that we would do? Stand up for a second. Let's say, for example, we're settling on a business deal, and we just made the deal. What are we going to do? Pleasure doing business with you. We have a firm handshake. We just made eye contact, too. What does eye contact say in American business? Interest, trust, forthright. We always say in the United States, for example, that person or that girl is a stand-up guy or a stand-up girl. What do we mean by that? For example, if you stand straight, what does it say? Exactly right. We're trustworthy. We're confident. But it varies from place to place. And we also get into different countries with social structures or religious backgrounds. For example, if you get into many Arab or Muslim countries, those countries are ruled by religion, meaning you're not going to do business in certain ways, certain times, or even in certain attire. I don't say that to offend anybody. I say that is the way it is. We have specific manners and customs, just like we have a business handshake. If I were doing business in Japan, how might I greet somebody? What might be the opening greeting? Yes. Yeah, you would bow to show respect. For example, and in Japan too, one of the things that happens in meetings at this point in time, they have plastic boxes outside the meeting rooms. You put your phone in. That shows that you are there for the meeting and you will not be disturbed for the course of the meeting. So all this stuff goes in, and we get into things like language and personal communication as well. I would remember this too, guys, because it often shows up as a bonus question. BMW, Audi, and Volkswagen don't allow their executives, they don't allow their employees to get company email when they're not at work. Why is that? Any guesses?
So who?
We have BMW, we have Audi, and we have Volkswagen, all German car companies. Why do they not allow people to have access to email after working hours? Yes?
They don't want them to get burned out.
They want them to have a high quality life and not get burned out. You're absolutely correct. Is that going to fly in the United States? Hell no, man. I'm checking emails at 3 in the morning. Sometimes, however, when we start trying to translate our slogans, for example, our ideas from one culture to another, sometimes it gets messed up. For example, the term Siri for Apple in Japan was a slang term for the word butt. Guys, here's another one too, guys. When the first GPS systems came out, first of all, what's the default voice? If you get a voice assistant, if you get a map, if you get any kind of GPS, what gender is the default voice? You got it. In every country in the world, that's pretty much okay. In Germany, however, the default setting went to a male voice because when GPS came out, a lot of the male drivers did not like taking direction from a female. So cultural issues can be that different, guys. Doesn't matter. By the way, I have. Does anybody have an international accent for their voice assistant? I do. Mine is Australian. My wife, I think, is a little jealous. So it comes down to other cultural issues as well. For example, I'm not going to read these to you guys, but it comes down to in the Middle East, don't ever shake left hands with somebody because that is the hand you use for bathroom duties. It's a big sign of disrespect. Even if you're left-handed, shake with your right hand. Know the cultural standards before you get into a given area. We have different standards for punctuality as well, even within our country. We're in the East Coast here, so we're uptight. Everything's on time. If you're not on time, you're early. If you get out to the West Coast, stuff doesn't usually start get rolling until after 10 a.m. So we even have different cultures within our own countries, but cultures have different standards for that stuff as well. Here are ways in which people have messed up in other countries. This is the first President Bush, and he was visiting Australia. Guys, if I do this in this country, what does it mean? If I do this in Australia, what does it mean? Take away one of the fingers. So George Bush, the first President Bush, unintentionally flipped off the entire country of Australia, not realizing he thought it was peace or victory and didn't realize what he was doing. Richard Gere, who's an American actor, was doing a charity event with an Indian actress, and in a fit of enthusiasm, gave her a smack on the cheek. She was a friend. I think it was somewhat consensual, but in addition to the fact that this probably does not fly in our modern work culture, you do not have public displays of affection in certain parts of India. So you have to know what's appropriate. The other thing too, guys, I'll give you one piece of business advice. We have a very casual business culture in the United States. We usually talk to people with first names. It's the way it works. However, don't call somebody by their first name until they give you permission. Particularly if you're in a job interview, if you're interviewing with Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. or Doctor, use their title and their last name. If they say, call me Sarah or call me John or whatever, then call them by their first name. Allow them to set the standard. With me so far, guys. All right, other things to be considering when we get into economic forces. We talked a little bit about the exchange rate, guys. Let's talk about that a little more, but I want to see if you're getting this. From this side of the room is a powerful dollar, a good exchange rate for the dollar, good or bad for our economy? What are your thoughts? Is a powerful dollar good or bad? If we have a favorable exchange rate, is it good or bad, or is it both? What are your thoughts? Oh, don't make me randomly calling somebody. Yes, sir. Tell me more about that, because you're absolutely correct. Tell me why it could be good.
Good. It means that our currency is more valuable than, say, some foreign countries such as like India, rupees, the yen. It's just, so foreign exchange is more competitive.
So if we're traveling to Japan and we got a powerful dollar against the yen, you're gonna have a good vacation, right? You're gonna be able to afford a nicer hotel. Tell me something bad about the powerful dollar.
People might not want to put their business here because it's too expensive.
That's exactly right. So exchange rates can be positive or negative, particularly when we start getting into the idea of tourism. People, for whatever reason, I don't know how many folks here have friends or family in Germany, but folks from Germany love American Disneyland and Disney World. They'll come here strictly to go there. And when the exchange rates are not in their favor, fewer of them come here. So again, high value of the dollar means we're more powerful but more expensive. Low dollar means we're less powerful but more foreign investment. And so in terms of exchange rates, they do affect our investment in other countries. Now, we get into something the Chinese are often considered to do, and that's called devaluation. And that means you intentionally try to manipulate your financial monetary policy so your currency drops. Guys, if you want to know why so much investment came into China in the 90s till now, it's because the currency was so low. We can invest over there for next to nothing. Guys, if you want to look at other places, for example, India, if we're setting up a call center, if you want to know why you get so many calls in terms of tech support, help desk, all these things, why those are coming from India. Because of technology, it costs roughly half the cost to establish a call center in India as it does in the United States. That's a big deal, guys. So we're talking about currency devaluation, and then we also get into something called counter trading. What we can do there too, guys. Let's say I'm the United States, and I have the surplus of soybeans, which I do right now, by the way. Why does the United States have a surplus of soybeans? Who is our biggest customer? Used to make tofu. Who is our biggest customer? Yeah, China's our biggest customer. So all of a sudden we have all these farmers who've been growing soybeans like it's going out of style and no place to sell them. So if I've got soybeans and India needs soybeans, and India, for example, has, I don't know, spice that I want, the governments can actually arrange for trading to take place, so we're not even dealing with currency, we're actually dealing with barter. It can happen that way. Barter, the oldest form of commerce in the world. So in terms of where we locate, guys, a lot of companies you think are based in the United States are not based in the United States. We get the Carnival Cruise Lines, for example. Yes, they have their headquarters in the U.S. in Miami, but they're actually incorporated in Panama. Many of these companies are incorporated other places for more favorable tax rates. There are reasons why we operate outside of our borders. We talked about foreign tourists and the dollar, so we're going to keep going as well. Guys, in terms of things like copyright, actually, I would argue, and feel free to argue back if you feel I'm wrong in this, tell me. I think the biggest concern that we as a country have right now is how we're going to protect our intellectual property. Has anybody here, and I promise I'm not doing a video recording, we're just doing audio recording, so nobody will be identified by us answering this question. How many of you have ever illegally downloaded music? I have too, guys. It was back in the days when Napster and LimeWire and all these things were coming out. Keep in mind, I come from an era where you had to buy music. Back in those days, if a new CD came out, a new record from your favorite artist, anybody know what it would cost? Any guesses what it cost to buy a new record? Oh, humor me. $20 is a good guess. 18 to 20 bucks. You'd order it like 2 weeks in advance or a month in advance, and you'd be downloading this. Not downloading, you'd actually be picking a physical copy. Well, all of a sudden, the MP3 came out, and people said, we can download this stuff. Why are we going to pay for it? What happened to the music business, guys? Anybody guess? Oh my God, the bottom fell. Guys, the most profitable years for music are behind us in terms of the music industry. Steve Jobs, when he created iTunes, probably saved the music business in the fact that people were at least paying something for it. Here's what nobody is seeing coming right now, guys. How many of you know anything about 3D printing? What is 3D printing?
It's a polymer that comes together and 3D printed. That's about all I know about it.
Quite right. Let's use Nike shoes as an example. What are your shoes made out of? There's not a lot of leather in them. There's still some leather shoes, but what's a sole made out of? Rubber, which can be made from a polymer. The synthetic leathers that we're using right now are basically plastics. The nylons that go in your shoes are basically plastics. So we're talking essentially about a new technology that's going to be able to take any design and allow people to reproduce it at home. If I were Nike, if I were Adidas, if I were anybody who makes things out of those kind of components, I'd be learning the lessons of the music industry to say you better protect your intellectual property. If you download an MP3, does it sound any different from the original source it came from? It doesn't. It's a perfect digital copy. There's no reason why you could not print out your own perfect digital copy. In fact, look it up. I think it was ASICS or Adidas 2 years ago already started experimenting with printing soles. If they're doing that 2 years ago, I guarantee you other people are working on it. Protecting designs and intellectual property, because as we say, people aren't buying physical goods anymore, are the new Wild West eras of commerce. You guys, it's so tough to back up copyright. If I make a record and I post it online, and somebody in Brazil or China or France downloads it, what can I conceivably do about it without the government helping me? Jack, you can put in the second word for yourself. That's what I can really do. So it comes down to trying to get governments to back up copyright. I will say this, I don't always agree with the administration, but the administration's choice to try to back up trade and copyright law, I think is a good move, because otherwise we're going to continue to lose intellectual property to other countries. Guys, we still sell these things in other markets because of regulation. Anybody know what asbestos is? It is bad. What is it?
It's a carcinogen used for like building.
Yep. It's fireproofing. They used to, actually your brake pads still have some asbestos in them, but they used to put asbestos lining in buildings so if the building caught fire, that the fire wouldn't spread. Great. It's a wonderful breathe because your lungs are filling up with fluid, it comes from asbestos. We sell pesticides that cause cancer and have been banned in this country for 20 years in all kinds of other markets. We sell cars that don't have airbags or seatbelts in other markets as well, and we certainly sell drugs we wouldn't sell to our own population in other countries. So we do this stuff, guys. We also have what we refer to as corruption. Countries that operate outside the law, the biggest offenders are the top three: Somalia, South Sudan, and North Korea. These are all places where the government doesn't follow its own rules, and people suffer because of it, which is why we don't want to do business there. So, guys, last but not least, this is our last point for today. We're on the global war on climate change. Now, when I say this, I leave it to your own conscience to decide whether or not you believe that human beings have an impact on climate change. I do. I am a believer that we do have an impact. I respect your right to disagree with me. But the bottom line is the people who are feeling the effects of climate change first are people in the developing world, people on coastal regions, people on the equator. That's also a factor in how we're deciding how we do global trade. Guys, have a great day.